Hi everyone and welcome back. So in this video, we'll continue our Excel with Python series and we'll go through some visualization techniques that we can use in Python to build some charts and graphs in Excel. So we'll create these plots and then add them to Excel workbooks that we can directly use and consume. So let's start. Again, in this video, I'll give you three examples, but feel free to explore more with XLSX Writer or even Matplotlib that you can embed back into the Excel sheet. So the first one that we'll explore is with XLSX Writer, and we can directly create Excel files which have a variety of charts. And the first one that we are going to explore is a simple line chart. So let's start. I'll import XLSX Writer, and what I'll do is, again, I'll initialize my workbook and I'll create a worksheet. So there we go. And let me add another code block here. Let me add some data to it. So let's say we have month and the corresponding sales. So I can create a list of lists. I can add the first one is month and the second value here is sales. And now next column, so these are my headers in this case. Next one I have, let's say for Jan the value is 1000. Next one I'll copy paste the same thing, Feb, March, April, and let's say my values are 1000, 1200, 900 and 1400. So this is my dummy data. What I'll do is I will write this data in my worksheet. The way I can do that is I'll say worksheet dot write and I'll write row. So the first one I'll write row in the form of A1, and this is where I'm starting, and I'll give it the value data 0. So I'm saying start from A1 cell and write a row. In this case, the headers will get written month and sales. Next, I do worksheet dot write again, and now I'll write columns. So these are two different ways in which we are writing, and I'm saying start from the cell A2, and what you can do is write row of 0 for row in data 1. Now what I've done here is I have used another function called write column, and I'm saying start from the cell A2 and write the whole column. But what data will you write? Write row of 0 defined from data 1. So take from the first index, take all this data and write the first values. Now I'll do the same thing to write the second column, and I'll start with B2 in this case, and I'll say write row of 1 for data 1. Okay. Now we have all the data in a worksheet. I'll create a chart. Chart is equals to workbook dot add chart, and I'll define the type of the chart to be line, and my type will also go in a quote. So that's where I've defined the variable chart. Now I will add the series to the chart. So this is where I will be defining what values should the chart take, the x-axis and the y-axis, and I'm giving the name sales over time. Okay. Now what I can do is I can insert this chart, and where I want to insert in the cell D2, and I'll say insert D2, insert chart D2 and this chart object. So in this case, I've inserted the chart object in the cell D2, and let's close our workbook dot close, and that's it. So let's see, do we have this workbook here? Yes, I've created this. I'll just quickly download this one and let me open this out. Okay, perfect. So this is a workbook, and what we did in this case was first we added some data, month and sales, and then I defined a chart variable, going back to the Excel. So I defined a chart variable in which I added what type of chart do I want, and then I added the details that I want these series, and this is the name of the chart. And then this is stored at D2. So if you see, this chart starts from the top left corner is at D2, and that's what I defined from here. And then I close the workbook. So this is how you can add a simple line graph. Let's look at another example where we can add a bar chart. So we'll do the same thing. So first we'll initialize our workbook and worksheet. So again, remember that in XLSX, you can't open existing Excel sheets and modify them. So we'll initialize a new one and I'll label this bar chart. Again, let's use the same data that we had. And what I'm going to do is, again, I'll say add the same data. So we had this data list of lists defined in the previous block. I'm using the same and inserting that data in my worksheet. So once I'm done with this, and let me add another code block. Now what I want is to define another type of chart. So I'll initialize a chart variable. Chart is equals to workbook dot add chart, and I'll say type is bar. Now this is what I wanted to add. In this case, I've added type as bar chart. The rest of the things will be exactly the same. I will add the data to this chart similar to how we did in the previous example. I'll add the data here. So I'll say chart.add series, categories, values, and name. Now I will insert the chart again in the same place. So I'll say everything is very similar. We'll just do insert the chart at D2 and I'll close the workbook. So let's just execute this, and now we should have a bar chart. Let me download this file and let's open this. Perfect. So let me close this one, and this is a new file, bar chart. If you see, even in this one, what we have is the same data. The only difference in the whole piece of code was that we defined the type is equals to bar. Everything else was same. Exactly, we can use the exact same syntax. We just changed the type of the chart from line graph to bar graph, and that's what we have over here. Okay, moving on. Let's move to one final example. Now this example I want to emphasize because we will be creating a lot of visualizations using Matplotlib or other libraries. Primarily, Matplotlib is used to get some basic visualizations whenever you're dealing with pandas, data frame, or you're working with Python. What we want, we should be able to have Matplotlib plots and directly export those plots in an Excel file. So let's create a Matplotlib chart and then let's export it to a workbook. So this is my example. I'll add some code blocks here. Now let's import matplotlib dot pyplot as plt, and then import pandas as pd, and then we already have workbook imported. I'll import one more library from OpenPyXL. So in this example, we'll work off with OpenPyXL and Matplotlib. So we'll use a combination of these libraries to finally export something in Excel that we make from Matplotlib. So let's import these libraries. Let's do this. And now let me add the same data, but now let me add it in the data frame. So I had monthly sales for the first 4 months. I'll just create a df data frame is equals to pd.data frame, and then I've added month sales. So we have done this before, so I've just created a data frame. And now let me create a line plot using Matplotlib. So first we can initialize a canvas. So I'll initialize a simple canvas here, 8,6, and then I'll do plt.plot df month comma df sales. So x comma y, so I'll have month on the x-axis and sales on the y-axis, and then I want to specify marker is equals to O. So this is my circle marker, and let's give it some titles. So I'll just give title and the x and y labels for my graph. And so one more thing that we can do is I can also enable grid. Now we'll see what a grid is, and once I do that, let me just save this figure. I have created this figure. Now I can use a function called savefig to save this figure as line plot.png. Now I can do plt.close, but at the same time, let's first do a plt.show. I also want to see what the graph looks like. So this is my graph, and this is what I meant with grid lines. So when we did plt.grid as true, we enabled these grid lines, and now we have also saved this figure, so it should be in the same directory. So I have lineplot.png. Now what I want to do is I want to load a workbook. Let's create a workbook and let's activate a sheet, workbook.active. Now I want to add an image. So the way I can add an image is I have OpenPyXL. Now I can use this function that we imported called image and defined an image variable. I'll say image and I'll give the address. So I have, this is the path of my plot. I'll give that to this function and I'll just say ws.add image. Now I can specify where I want to add the image. Let's say I want to add at E5. So what I've done here is, this is syntax for OpenPyXL. I have opened, I've created a workbook object. Then I've created a worksheet, active worksheet. Then I took this image, created it into an image object, img, which I can add using this add image function on this active worksheet, starting from cell E5. Okay. Now let's save this workbook, workbook.save, and I'll save it as embedded line matplot.xlsx. Let's execute this. Okay, workbook is not defined, my bad. Let me also import this from OpenPyXL import workbook. Okay, perfect. Let's do this. Done. So now I have a new Excel file. Let me just download this one and I'll open this. Let's close this Excel and I'll drag this here. So this is my Excel file, and this plot is directly made using my function in Python. So this plot is made using Matplotlib, and this is inserted at E1, 2, 3, 4, fifth, and then this is the fifth one. So it starts at E5, and this is the size of my canvas. So it is 800 cross 600, which is what we have defined in the figure, 8,6. And then we did a plot of month and sales. We did everything that we do in Matplotlib. We did all the processing that we would do in Python. But finally, once we had this plot, we saved it, imported this image, and added it to a workbook by using OpenPyXL functions. So that's how you can use the combination of OpenPyXL and Matplotlib to embed Matplotlib charts into the Excel. So I hope these three examples make sense. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.